Well, in this second clip, I'm going to be talking about the presentation of gender. In other words, I will be looking at how media frames gender representation. So the presentation of gender can be described as the cultural and social expectation of one sex, which tends to include frames that reproduce dominant notions of femininity and masculinity. In other words, we are really looking at how one sex is expected to be seen in the media. And this is probably most prominent in the perception of partial nudity. If you take a look at this picture, it came from a famous incident happening in the Super Bowl, which is the final game of the NFL in 2004, where there was a performance between two of the most famous singers at the time, Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson. And if you don't know Janet Jackson, she is the younger sister of Michael Jackson. So when they were performing together, they were performing a song from Justin Timberlake. And towards the end of the song, Justin actually ripped off part of the outfits of Janet Jackson. So part of her breast was exposed to the camera, and Janet Jackson had to cover her the cover parts of her breast just to not just to prevent it from showing it to the camera. So this give you probably a, and this picture give you a contrast between what Justin Timberlake normally did back in the day, because when he performed, a lot of the time he performed topless. I mean, he took off his shirt, and it's just the the concept that, well, men can be topless, and when women when part of the women's breast is exposed, then it needs to be covered. So it gives the feeling that, well, men is not expected well men it's not expected to cover the upper part of the body, whereas women is expected. So that's probably give you the starting uh, idea of how gender representation is expected in the media. And I mean, if you compare what happened in the 2004 Super Bowl and what happened in the 2005 hurricane, the the comparison between looting versus fighting images of Hurricane Katrina and the images of Jackson and Timberlake, the the first one seemed to show a lot more potential bias in terms of being racism towards the black population of the U.S., whereas the Jackson and Timberlake uh, comparison does not really show a potential bias, but it just says a lot about how the media expect, and not just the media, but I mean regular people as well expect uh, male and female to be presented differently in the media. So that leads to the production and reproduction of meanings of gender in the media, which we will talk about this later on. That event, that 2004 event, was actually called Nipplegate, and I probably don't need to explain to you what nipple is. So Nipplegate, right? And a lot of different medias have played with this event so differently. Uh, so the first one, this is a concept that we need to start thinking critically about. So woman's breast, so this part of woman, or they actually call that event as a wardrobe malfunction, and this is a word that existed in dictionary, which means when part of the body is exposed versus the man chest, which is acceptable to be exposed. And the Jackson, it's called breast bearing. Did that event of Janet Jackson, she was called breast bearing by BBC News and KMBC TV in Kansas City. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation talk of the exposure, and well, I mean they actually reported about the exposure and actually even called it the moral outrage. Why this sport network ESPN similarly described a breast review which sparked mass outrage. So a lot of the media were quite negative about it. However, what people didn't really talk about was, well, why when the same part of the body from different gender is exposed to the public, either through the media or not through the media, why we have a different expectation for that? And they actually look back at the event and uh, imagine that, well, if they switch the role, not well, so because in the event Justin actually rip off part of the Jackson outfit, right? But if they switch the role and Janet Jackson rip off some part of the just some part of Justin Timberlake's outfit, it wouldn't be a big deal, and it would probably have been seen as a comedic moment rather than a scandal as it was. Right, so this is the end of the second part, okay, and I will see you again in the next part.